Today, we think of Jamaica as a popular tourist destination and the home of the legendary reggae artist, Bob Marley, and the world's fastest sprinter, Usain Bolt. However, for centuries, Jamaica was known for its brutal form of slavery and its sugar plantations, which produced sugar, molasses, and rum. Africans and indigenous Arawaks were enslaved and put to work on sugar plantations under Spanish and later British rule. Jamaica's motto is "Out of many, one people." This became Jamaica's motto in 1962. That was the year Jamaica gained its independence from Britain. The motto reflects the diversity of the Jamaican people, a mix of different races and cultures. The motto is inscribed on the Jamaican coat of arms, which also shows a male and female member of the Arawak people standing on either side of a shield. The Arawak people were the original Jamaicans. They migrated to Jamaica from South America, not Africa. Arawaks were the original inhabitants of Jamaica. Arawaks inhabited Jamaica hundreds of years before Christopher Columbus arrived in the New World, and were enslaved before the Spanish began importing African slaves. Jamaica is the third largest island in the Caribbean Sea, and is located south of Cuba, west of Haiti, and east of Belize in Central America. Arawaks migrated to Jamaica from South America around 600 to 950 AD and named the island Jamaica, which means land of wood and water. They inhabited Jamaica for hundreds of years before Christopher Columbus arrived on the island from Spain in 1494. The Arawak population in Jamaica numbered as many as 60,000 before the arrival of the Spanish. By 1550, the Spanish wiped out the Arawaks through warfare, starvation, slavery, and disease. Merely 0.5% of Arawak DNA can be found in today's Jamaican population. The descendants of the Arawaks are a mix of Arawak, Spanish, and African people. The Jamaicans who we know today are the descendants of African slaves who were first brought to Jamaica by the Spanish to replace the dying Arawak population in the 1500s. Despite hundreds of years of brutality and slavery, under both Spanish and British rule, African slaves and their descendants survived because they were not as susceptible to the Old World diseases that killed off the Arawak population. In addition, some African and surviving Arawak slaves escaped into the mountainous regions of Jamaica and formed independent communities of free men, women, and children known as Maroons. By the time Christopher Columbus arrived in the New World in 1492, it is estimated that the Arawak population throughout the Caribbean may have numbered in the hundreds of thousands, and, by other estimates, numbered in the millions. Using dugout canoes made from large trees, the Arawaks ventured into the Caribbean Sea, island hopping from Trinidad and Tobago, off the coast of Venezuela, northward towards the islands, such as Puerto Rico, Cuba, and Jamaica, in the Greater Antilles. These dugout canoes were powered by paddles, and large enough to hold 70 to 80 people. These canoes were not only seaworthy, but capable of moving as fast as boats with sails. After thousands of years of island hopping, the Arawaks settled the island of Jamaica. On the island of Jamaica, Arawaks formed as many as 200 villages along the island's coast. Many words we use today originated from the Arawak language. These include words like hurricane, tobacco, hammock, barbecue, and canoe. Columbus traveled to Jamaica on his second voyage to the New World in search of gold. Columbus had 17 ships and 1,200 men. The Spanish eventually discovered that there was no gold in Jamaica. Nonetheless, the Spanish enslaved the Arawaks and ruled the island for the next 150 years, until they were defeated by the British in 1655. The Spanish brought sugar cane to Jamaica from the Canary Islands. The Arawaks were forced to cultivate sugar cane on Spanish-owned sugar plantations. The sugar cane was then converted into sugar, molasses, and rum, which the Spanish sold for a profit. Arawak populations inhabited the Caribbean region, including Cuba, Jamaica, Hispaniola, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. The Arawaks also inhabited Central America and South America, and are believed to have originated from the heart of Venezuela. Some Arawak tribes inhabited parts of Florida, in what would become America. The Arawaks were mild and simple people by nature. Physically, they had brown-colored skin and straight, coarse, black hair. Their faces were broad and their noses flat. Arawaks were short in stature. They grew cassava, sweet potatoes, corn, fruits, vegetables, cotton, and tobacco. Tobacco was grown on a large scale, as smoking was their most popular pastime. They built villages all over the island, but most Arawaks settled on the coasts and near rivers, as they mainly fished for food. Fish was a major part of their diet. The Arawaks lived in huts made of mud, straw, and palm leaves, and they slept in hammocks. They wore very few clothes. On May 5, 1494, Christopher Columbus landed in Jamaica. This occurred on his second voyage to the New World. Columbus had heard about Jamaica, then called Jamaica, from the Cubans, who described it as the land of blessed gold. Columbus soon found out that there was no gold in Jamaica. On arrival at St. Anne's Bay, Columbus found the Arawak Indians inhabiting the island. Initially, the Arawaks and the Spanish had an amicable relationship. However, the Spanish began to torture and kill the Arawaks in order to take over their land. Due to violent resistance by the Arawaks, Spanish settlers did not completely take control of the island until 1509. The Spanish enslaved the Arawaks and had them work on sugar plantations and in mines. The Spanish took Arawak women as common-law wives. This arrangement produced mixed-race offspring. The Arawaks were brutalized by the Spanish. The Spanish punished Arawaks for the slightest infraction, with beatings and mutilations, such as cutting off a nose, ear, or hand. The Spanish raped Arawak girls and women. The Spanish sent thousands of Arawaks to Spain to be sold as slaves. Many Arawaks committed suicide due to the brutality of the Spanish. Some Arawaks murdered their own children to prevent them from having to live their lives as slaves. In 1513, the Spanish began to import slaves from Africa to work on sugar plantations in Jamaica. From 1513 to 1807, more than 1 million African slaves were brought to Jamaica. The descendants of these African slaves make up the majority of Jamaica's population today. By 1550, Old World diseases such as smallpox, measles, mumps, chickenpox, and influenza killed approximately 99% of Arawaks in Jamaica and other Caribbean islands. These diseases were brought to the New World by the Spanish, and the Arawaks had no immunity to these Old World diseases. Today, there are approximately 10,000 living descendants of the Arawaks. These descendants are a mix of Arawak, Spanish, and African people. They can be found in coastal areas of Venezuela, Guyana, Suriname, and French Guiana. On May 10, 1655, the British successfully attacked Jamaica. The Spanish surrendered to the British. Slaves, who were held by the Spanish, escaped into the mountainous regions of Jamaica, where they could not be recaptured. During their escape, these slaves gathered weapons and supplies that had previously been owned by the Spanish. The Spanish left Jamaica and fled to Cuba. These escaped slaves and their descendants were known as the Maroons. The Maroons were predominantly of African descent. The Maroons intermarried Arawaks and produced mixed-race offspring. Maroon communities exist today in the mountainous regions of Jamaica. The word Maroon comes from the Spanish word cimarrones, which meant mountaineers. The Maroons founded their own independent communities. There were two significant groups of Maroons. The Leeward Maroons occupied the mountainous region, in the northwest portion of the island. The Windward Maroons occupied the mountainous region, in the northeast portion of the island. Maroons lived as free people in these mountainous regions. They formed villages with men, women, and children, and some of these communities adopted West African culture and languages. Many Maroons had been warriors in West Africa. Prior to their enslavement, they were familiar with guerrilla tactics and employed these tactics to successfully defend their communities. The Maroons were armed and patrolled the area around their villages. They used horns to alert their communities of danger. The British continued to import African slaves to work on sugar plantations. Jamaica had one of the largest slave populations in the New World. The British punished slaves by whipping them, mutilating them, and burning them alive. The death rate of Jamaican slaves exceeded their birth rate. Queen Nanny of the Maroons was an escaped slave who was born in Ghana and died in Jamaica. She was born in 1686 and died in 1733. Queen Nanny was a Maroon leader and skilled guerrilla fighter who defended her community against invasions by the British. She repelled the British by employing guerrilla tactics, such as hidden trails, ambushes, and booby traps. Her headquarters was a fortified village known as Nanny Town. Nanny Town was located in the Blue Mountains in northeast Jamaica. It was northeast of Kingston, the current capital of Jamaica. Queen Nanny led the Windward Maroons. Today, Queen Nanny is a national hero in Jamaica. Cudjoe was another Maroon leader and skilled guerrilla fighter. He was born in Jamaica around 1660 and died in 1764. Cudjoe was the son of a Maroon leader. Cudjoe and Queen Nanny lived around the same time. Cudjoe led a community of Maroons at Cudjoe Town, which was located in the mountainous region of northwest Jamaica. Cudjoe Town was southeast of Montego Bay, a major port for the export of sugar. This group of Maroons was called the Leeward Maroons. The Maroons were armed with guns and knives. The Maroons attacked British sugar plantations, burned them to the ground, killed their owners, gathered weapons and supplies, and freed slaves. Many of these freed slaves fled to the mountains and joined the Maroons. The Maroons secretly visited sugar plantations and encouraged slaves to revolt and seek their freedom. The Maroons had a severe impact on British sugar production. The British responded by sending troops into the mountains to eliminate the Maroons. The First Maroon War took place in 1728. However, this tactic did not succeed and the British eventually entered into negotiations with the Maroons. In 1739, Cudjoe reached an agreement with the British. The British agreed to recognize the Leeward Maroons as an independent nation. Maroons could govern themselves, and they were granted their own land. In exchange, the Maroons agreed to assist the British in repelling foreign invaders. They agreed to stop attacking sugar plantations, and they agreed to stop harboring runaway slaves. Cudjoe Day is celebrated in Jamaica on the first Monday in January. The rebellious Maroons paved the way for the abolition of slavery in Jamaica on August 1, 1838.